All right, picture this for a second. You're out for a run on a totally scorching mid-July afternoon. Within minutes, you've got these tiny drops of water completely beating up on your forehead. And before you even know it, your face is drenched, your shirt is completely soaked, and you're just dripping. Now, for most of us, this is a minor, honestly kind of embarrassing annoyance, right? But what if I told you that this sticky, uncomfortable phenomenon is actually one of the main reasons you're still alive to complain about it? Seriously, imagine that thermometer creeping past 95 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's about 35 degrees Celsius. Without the ability to sweat, your body in that kind of heat would overheat incredibly fast. We're talking just a short amount of time before your internal organs would really struggle to function. Even your brain could suffer severe permanent damage. Sweating isn't just some gross byproduct of a hard workout, it's literally a vital life-saving mechanism.
So welcome to today's explainer. I am genuinely so pumped for this one because today we're jumping right into a really amazing education lesson on the biological science behind your body's natural cooling system. By the end of this, we're going to completely reframe how you think about sweat.
Okay, here's our lesson plan for today. First, we'll look at what sweat actually is. Then, we'll check out your body's built-in thermostat, dive into the weird science of nerves and smells, figure out why everyone sweats so differently, and finally, look at the dangerous reality of what life would be like without it.
All right, part 1. What is sweat? The scale of our cooling system.
To kick things off, let's just try to wrap our heads around the sheer scale here. Get this, 2 to 4 million. That is the number of individual sweat glands embedded right beneath the skin of an average human body. 2 to 4 million. They're virtually everywhere. Your forehead, your back, your hands, your feet. I mean, even your eyelids have sweat glands. It is this massive, microscopic plumbing network that spans your entire body. And if we actually break down what's coming out of those millions of tiny microscopic pipes, it's surprisingly simple. It's about 99% water. That remaining tiny 1% sliver, that's just trace amounts of essential minerals, things like salts, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. Oh, and here's a pretty surprising fact for you. Fresh sweat is actually entirely odorless. That's right, the liquid itself doesn't smell bad at all. We will definitely get to the real culprit behind body odor in just a minute. Moving right along to part 2, your built-in thermostat and exactly how we cool down.
You know, your body is basically this biological machine, right? And it hums along at peak efficiency at exactly 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, or 37 degrees Celsius. Whenever your internal temperature starts to creep up past that, a tiny but absolutely crucial region deep inside your brain, called the hypothalamus, springs into action. Think of the hypothalamus as a hypersensitive, smart thermostat for your body. The second it detects that things are getting just a little too hot, it sends out an emergency signal. So how does this brilliant 4-step process actually play out in real time? Well, step 1, the brain detects the heat. Step 2, it fires off signals to those millions of glands we just talked about, basically commanding them to release sweat onto your skin. Step 3, and honestly, this is where the physics magic happens, the sweat evaporates. As that liquid turns into a gas, it physically pulls the heat energy right away from your skin, which brings us perfectly to step 4. Your body cools down, and your internal temperature drops back to normal. It's actually the exact same evaporative science that makes you shiver when you step out of a warm swimming pool into a cool breeze. Okay, part 3. Nerves and smells, fight, flight, and bacteria. Now I know what you're probably thinking. Why do my hands get totally drenched right before a huge job interview, even when I'm sitting in a freezing cold air-conditioned waiting room? Well, this is one of the most fascinating quirks of human biology. That clammy hand feeling, it's driven by your ancient fight or flight response. When you're stressed, scared, or even just incredibly excited, your brain pumps out hormones like adrenaline. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing quickens, and suddenly the sweat glands in your palms, feet, and underarms just kick into absolute overdrive. Evolutionary scientists actually believe this specific trait helped our ancient ancestors survive. Basically, slightly sweaty palms gave them a much better grip on rocks, branches, or weapons in life or death situations. So the next time you get pre-exam jitters, just remember, that's your body preparing you to literally fight a saber-toothed tiger. And hey, that brings us to the elephant in the room, the smell. As we learned a minute ago, fresh sweat is essentially just water and salt. It literally has no smell. The real problem here, the true source of body odor, is bacteria. You have millions of completely harmless bacteria naturally living all over your skin surface right now. When you sweat,
These bacteria essentially throw a massive feast. They start breaking down the compounds in your sweat, and it's the chemical byproducts of that bacterial digestion that actually cause those strong odors. And this perfectly explains why a sweaty forehead smells like absolutely nothing, but a sweaty armpit, well, doesn't. You actually have two completely different types of sweat glands. Your regular glands produce that mostly water, odorless sweat. But in places like your underarms, you have what are called apocrine glands. These specialized glands produce a much thicker type of sweat that's super rich in proteins and fats. For the bacteria on your skin, apocrine sweat is basically a 5-star buffet. They totally gorge on it, and as a result, they produce much stronger, way more noticeable odors.
That brings us to part 4, sweating differently, and the variables involved.
I mean, we've all seen this at the gym, right? One person is barely glistening, while the person on the treadmill next to them looks like they just jumped in a pool. It turns out your individual sweat rate is a highly complex biological equation. First off, genetics play a huge role. Some people are just hardwired from birth with more active glands. Then there's the weather. High humidity means sweat can't evaporate as fast, so it just ends up pooling on your skin. Age, hormones, stress levels, and yes, even eating a really spicy taco can trigger your system. But here is my absolute favorite, totally counterintuitive fact: fitness levels. You might naturally think an out-of-shape person sweats more, right? But athletes actually start sweating earlier and a lot more heavily. Their bodies have become these highly trained, incredibly efficient air conditioning units that preemptively cool them down at the very first sign of exertion. Now, it's also worth pointing out that for some folks, this whole system is just constantly stuck in overdrive. This is a recognized medical condition known as hyperhidrosis. People dealing with this might experience excessive, super heavy sweating even when they're completely at rest in a perfectly cool room. It just goes to show how powerful and incredibly sensitive this biological mechanism really is. Which leads us to our final chapter, Part 5, Life Without Sweating and the Severe Dangers of Overheating. Seriously? Imagine if we just magically took away this evolutionary superpower? Without sweat, even light exercise on a pleasantly warm day turns into a ticking time bomb. Your uncooled internal body temperature would start to rapidly spike. You'd very quickly hit heat exhaustion, which brings on dizziness and nausea. And if it continues unchecked, you cross a terrifying line into a life-threatening emergency: heat stroke. Once your internal body temperature hits 104 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius, your cells literally begin to break down. Without immediate medical intervention at that point, your brain, your heart, and your vital organs are going to sustain severe damage. And this right here is exactly why every single health expert on the planet is constantly nagging you to drink your water. Hydration isn't just some trendy wellness buzzword. It is a literal mechanical necessity for your body. When you sweat, you are rapidly depleting your body's coolant reservoir. Drinking fluids directly replaces that lost water, which ensures your life-saving cooling system has the raw materials it desperately needs to keep running, and more importantly, to keep you out of the danger zone. So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want you to think about this. Is your body's most annoying trait actually its single greatest survival tool? The next time you're wiping sweat from your forehead on a brutally hot day, or maybe feeling a little self-conscious about a damp shirt, take a second to just reframe it. Your body isn't working against you, it's working incredibly, tirelessly hard to protect you. Every single drop is a literal masterpiece of millions of years of evolution, keeping your engine running cool in a pretty harsh world. So, what other quote-unquote annoying quirks of human biology do you think might secretly be superpowers? Thanks so much for joining me for this education lesson today. And as always, never stop asking questions, because every great discovery begins with a little curiosity. Catch you next time.